All right, y'all, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Thursday, November 29th, 2018. Breaking news. Commentator Mark Lamont Hill fired at CNN because of his support for Palestinians. His comments have been called anti-Semitic. He says that is not the case. I'll give you all those details. Also, breaking news out of Alabama. Prominent black lawyer Donald Watkins and his son have been indicted on fraud charges. I'll give you those details as well. Major pressure applied to U.S. senators that is going to keep Thomas Farr from a lifetime appointment on the federal bench. Senator Tim Scott is a no vote for the vote suppressor in chief. Also, gerrymandering is a huge issue all across the country. In Virginia, there's a plan to tackle it. We'll tell you about that as well. Plus, leadership conference on civil and human rights coming to the support of Color of Change, blasting Facebook for how they treated Color of Change, plus the treatment of African-American users and staff. Juanita Gupta, the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference, will be joining us right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. In California, sheriff's deputies, they shoot and kill an unarmed black man with mental issues. Well, guess what? He lied about it. Now, his family has gotten a huge settlement. We'll talk with the mother and the lawyer right here on the show. Folks, it's a packed show. We're ready to go. Black, unapologetic, and unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, of course, longtime commentator at CNN. He is out, fired today as a result of a speech that he gave at the United Nations in support of the Palestinian people. Mediaite is reporting that CNN, this is the quote from them, Mark Lamont Hill is no longer under contract with CNN. According to their story, Hill, and here we go to my iPad, please, Hill urged countries to boycott Israel in a speech on Wednesday calling for a free Palestine from the river to the sea. It is that comment that a Jewish organization seized on. They say that is a phrase that has been used by Hamas as well as other anti-Israel terror groups, the phrase from the river to the sea. It implies, according to this story, the phrase implies the replacement of Israel by a Palestine stretching from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Mark Lamont Hill disputes the characterization of his comments. This is what they have here, down here. He says, quote, I support Palestinian freedom. I support Palestinian self-determination. I am deeply critical of Israeli policy and practice. I do not support anti-Semitism, killing Jewish people, or any of the other things attributed to my speech. I have spent my life fighting these things. He also then tweeted, my reference to river to the sea was not a call to destroy anything or anyone. It was a call for justice, both in Israel and in the West Bank, Gaza. The speech very clearly and specifically said those things. No amount of debate will change what I actually said or what I meant. He then said, this isn't a case of throwing rocks and hiding hands. I genuinely believe in the arguments and principles that I shared in the speech. I also genuinely want peace, freedom, and security for everyone. These are not competing ideals and values. And so here is a portion of his speech. I'm going to go to it where he talked about it. So I read some of that. And then he later said in his speech, which we're trying to get some video, he says, contrary to Western mythology, black resistance to American apartheid did not come purely through Gandhi and nonviolence. Rather, slave revolts and self-defense and tactics otherwise divergent from Dr. King or Mahatma Gandhi were equally important to preserving safety and attaining freedom. If we are to operate in true solidarity with the Palestinian people, we must allow the Palestinian people the same range of opportunity and political possibility. If we are standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people, we must recognize the right of an occupied people to defend itself. We must prioritize peace, but we must not romanticize or fetishize it. We must advocate and promote nonviolence at every opportunity, but we cannot endorse a narrow politics of respectability that shames Palestinians for resisting, for refusing to do nothing in the face of state violence and ethnic cleansing. And again, as I said, he is, of course, longtime professor at several universities, author as well, has been a longtime supporter of the Palestinian people. Again, as a result of that speech to the UN on yesterday, CNN has chosen to fire Mark Lamont Hill. I did send him a text message to see if he will come on the show to give us his thoughts about being fired from CNN and his speech. Had not heard back from him, though. Right now, I want to go to my panel. Michael Brown, former chair of the DNC Finance Committee, and Julian Malveaux, of course, economist, president emerita of Bennett College. Also, Malik Abdul with the Conservative Federation. What's up, folks?
Hey, how you doing?
So let's talk about this, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. There have been a number of people over the last several years, even entertainers, who have been calling for folks to boycott performing in Israel as a result of what's happening with the Palestinian people. Many have criticized them for canceling concerts. We saw Ron DeSantis in the gubernatorial election rip into the Dream Defenders because they have the same position as Mark Lamont Hill on this. And so, your thoughts on this idea that because he said, and I'm going to go back to the quote here, from the sea to the sea. From the comment, I got it, guys. From the river to the sea. Mm-hmm. So, you mean to tell me, so what, those 6 words?
You know, Roland, the thing about it is anytime anyone is even slightly critical of Israel, we're then accused of being anti-Semitic. I say we because if you are a human rights activist, then what's happening to the Palestinian people is simply wrong. And if you take it in terms of historical context, remember that Israel was created out of Palestinian land. Guess where they were going to put it first? Uganda. The initial plan was to put Israel, they were going to snatch some black people land, but you know, those Messiah were not having that. And so, but that was the initial plan, was to create a Jewish homeland on the African continent. Now, this was way back in 1948. I ain't that old, but I did study it. But in any case, it's just interesting contextually that Israel has come. They have encroached land from the initial space. Jewish people certainly have a right to live, to survive, and to thrive, but not at the expense of other people who they've run off their land. And so I don't think that Mark Lamont Hill said anything that was especially egregious, but I do think that we're in a climate, especially given the amount of anti-Semitism that we're experiencing, is we're in a climate where there are challenges.
So Malik, the question does beg, can somebody speak their thoughts that disagree with Israel and not be anti-Semitic? Can you disagree with what the Israelis do?
Hey, well, you know, I'm the Republican on the panel, so as far as...
what does that mean?
Well, the idea that people should be able to say things that others can misconstrue. In this particular case, we have the Jewish community. The Jewish community, they're the ones who's saying that his comments were anti-Semitic. We can debate whether or not they were. I don't think that they were.
Do you agree with me?
Well, of course. I'm sure I agree with you on a lot of things. But Mark Lamont Hill will be allowed to defend himself. Mark Lamont Hill will be given the benefit of the doubt that what he said was not anti-Semitic. Unfortunately, we live in a climate that does not allow that for for Republicans in general, but particularly black conservatives. I give him the benefit of the doubt that what he said was not anti-Semitic, in the same way that I give that same benefit of the doubt to Cindy Hyde-Smith.
Oh, please.
So, again, Mike Brown, when you see this, when you heard what I read his speech, and again, they're saying from the river to the sea, that's anti-Semitic. And again, CNN hasn't said exactly why they fired him, but clearly the criticism against his comments is the reason.
Yeah, I don't know if I can put my toe into the debate on whether the comment was anti-Semitic or not. However, I want to stop what the doctor was talking about and co-sign with what she was talking about. In the environment we're in, everything you say has to be thought about. You have to think about it. It's a different time now, whether we like it or not. And everything you say, everything you tweet, everything you email to a friend can be construed as something, and somebody may not like it. So in this environment, whether right or wrong, you got to, kind of deal with the consequences of that. Now, again, I am not saying whether right or wrong, because I don't know, and we'd have to have a further conversation whether those 6 words meant what they mean to other people and whether they were offensive or not. But clearly to some folks at CNN, they were.
So the pro-Israeli faction, anything you say that's pro-Palestinian is considered anti-Semitic. And that's problematic to me. I mean, Palestinian people are human beings also. I mean, people have lost their homes, their livelihoods, everything. And because, of course, no one likes anti-Semitism, everyone recoils from the Holocaust, but that doesn't mean that Palestinian people do not have rights. And on the other hand, you and I are gonna have a conversation later about the little Klan woman in Mississippi.
So again, hopefully Mark will hit back to me. We'd love to have him on the show to talk more about this, and so we'll have that for you. Some other breaking news again out of Alabama. Donald Watkins, prominent attorney in Alabama, and his son have been indicted on federal charges. This is from AL.com. Here we go to my iPad. Donald Watkins, who's 70 years old. Donald Watkins Sr. Now lives in Atlanta, of course, and his son, Donald Watkins Jr., 46 years old, indicted on a 10-count indictment. They face dealing with wire fraud, 2 counts of bank fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud. Federal authorities, is all tied to their biofuel company. Federal authorities say between 2007 and 2014, they induced investors to pay millions of dollars into a bank account controlled by Watkins Sr., telling the investors that their money would be used for specific purposes related to the international growth of 2 companies associated with the defendants. Instead, the money was used for other purposes, including the payment of personal tax obligations, personal loan payments, alimony, and clothing, according to the indictment. And folks who don't know, again, Donald Watkins, a major attorney, represented Mayor Arrington in his case, Richard Scrushy in his case, of course, the Health South CEO, and of course, a major supporter of HBCUs. In fact, his father was a longtime president of one of the HBCUs in Alabama, and his brother, the late Levi Watkins, was a historic heart surgeon at Johns Hopkins University. And so Donald Watkins comes from an extremely prominent family, and at one time he was considered to be potentially the first African American to ever who was going to own an NFL team. And so he was actually talked about as a potential billionaire would own one of these sports teams. That, of course, did not happen. And so we'll, of course, wait to hear more about that in terms of Donald Watkins and his son. Again, both of them indicted on federal fraud charges. Folks, let's talk about the story we've been dealing with for the last several days or even weeks. Thomas Farr, North Carolina voter suppression consultant. Folks, he also was a lawyer for Jesse Helms' campaign. They were the ones who sent postcards targeting African-American voters and suggested they were not eligible to vote. Well, here's the piece. He was supposed to be confirmed today, or there was supposed to be a vote today on his appointment, but the vote has been postponed until next week. Now, yesterday, there was a vote to end cloture, which pretty much said we're going to end debate. And, of course, it was 50-50. Vice President Mike Pence broke the tie. Jeff Flake of Arizona, first of all, he initially said that he would not vote for any judicial candidate until they took up a bill that protected Robert Mueller. But then today, he said he has been problematic in terms of his concern about Thomas Farr. Now, keep in mind, he sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Jeff Flake voted Thomas Farr's name out of committee. So I don't quite understand, if you were bothered by Thomas Farr, why in the hell did you vote for him in committee? Well, now he's saying he's an absolute no. And the one person who we said yesterday on the show could absolutely sink his nomination is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the only African-American Republican in the United States Senate. Well, after lots of pressure, phone calls and emails and social media, Scott says he is a no, which means that with those 2 votes, the votes are not there for Thomas Farr to get a seat on the bench. Now, I want to bring in our guest, Vanita Gupta, of course, President, CEO, Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights. Vanita, y'all have been very much against Thomas Farr, pushing people on the Hill not to vote for him. Certainly has to be good news to hear not only Senator Jeff Flake, but also Senator Tim Scott saying absolutely no.
Oh, my God. I am celebrating right now, and I will say the Leadership Conference Coalition of over 210 national civil and human rights organizations worked really hard over the last year. It's been a year-long campaign to defeat his nomination. And his history as a systematic vote suppressor in every sense of the word in North Carolina has been known. And so what was ultimately kind of, I think, really revealing is it was only in the last couple of days that we saw Senator Flake and Senator Tim Scott and folks actually really hone in on his record. We have been working this for a long time. The NAACP of North Carolina has been hard at work. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee, the Leadership Conference. But it's a big day. And here's another thing. People have been feeling pretty dismal about the ability to stop some of Trump's most extreme nominees to lifetime appointments on the federal bench. And we all know the important role that federal courts play in enforcing and ensuring our civil rights. This was an example of what can happen when progressives and civil rights advocates mobilize and refuse to let go and reveal the truth at every turn about some of these nominees. Thomas Farr needed to be defeated, and today he was, and it's a big day.
And not only that, look, this is a guy, first of all, this is a seat that has been held open the longest in the country.
Like 12
Two
years.
black women were appointed by President Barack Obama. It was the two senators from North Carolina, both Republican, who would not even allow those two women to even get a hearing. And then, of course, Trump wins. Okay, guess what? Time to appoint somebody to the seat. This guy has had ties to white supremacists, and even some critics say he wasn't even truthful in his nomination hearing. But again, what amazes me is to see a Senator Jeff Flake say this now when, if you had done what you're supposed to do in the committee, it doesn't even go to the floor.
Look, you're right. You're absolutely right. We saw this, though, with Ryan Bounds, the nominee to the Ninth Circuit, where he made it past committee, and then it was Tim Scott who kind of defeated him. It was the prior time. You're right. Senator Flake, saw religion and found it and probably read through the papers. Whatever the reason is, we'll take it. It has been, for too long, Republicans have not been putting country before party. They've been rubber stamping these nominees, some of whom really had either were incompetent to serve or had some of the most extremist views. And those folks are going to be affecting how justice gets rolled out for our children. And so today, the defeat of Thomas Farr, who has known ties to the white supremacists, who did mislead Congress about his own very kind of direct role with the Jesse Helms campaign in 1984 and 1990 in suppressing the black vote in North Carolina. This was an important day to assert our power as a civil rights community and to say that this kind of thing, even though Democrats don't have a majority, that there are Republicans of conscience that are willing to stand up for some of the most egregious wrongs in our courts.
Michael, pressure bust pipes, and so certainly when you're getting deluged with phone calls and emails and social media posts saying do not vote for this guy, there's no doubt that had an impact on Flake and Scott.
Well, first, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Lots of folks involved.
No, absolutely. And I think, Senator Scott, and whatever, I certainly don't know him and don't understand his or know his politics, but sometimes you need to stand up for what's right. And I was disappointed the other day when he didn't stand up for what's right, but clearly, after the pressure, he decided to stand up for what's right. So good, and I hope he does more of that. Why not? I mean, they still are going to want him in their press shots. They're still going to want him in the photoshops and on the Hill. So he's still going to be able to have his relevance within the party. So stand up. Why not?
Malik?
Oh, I mean, first of all, I have to say that Senator Scott is not just there to take photos.
I'm not by him, but by the leadership.
Well, even the leadership. I don't think that the leadership.
But they trot him out like that.
Well,
Let's just be honest. They trot him out.
Senator Tim Scott can stand on his own.
He is the diversity in the Republican Party.
He does not need to be trotted out.
He
does not need to be trotted out. Senator Tim Scott was elected the senator from South Carolina,
and he does not need to.
He does not need to. He does not need to be trotted out. And you shouldn't say that a black man can't be a Republican
but he's a junior
without having to be.
So that's not what I said.
Okay, one second. Malik, finish your point.
Whether he's junior or senior, he does not need to be trotted out. So he was not trotted out. He's not a photo op for the GOP. I'm happy with that he made the decision that he made. I think it's great that you guys, the nomination was defeated. Doesn't seem like he's going to vote for him. I support.
Should it have been?
In that. Oh, well, sure. I said that I didn't. I said I think probably Tuesday or something. I'm not wedded to Thomas Farr. I didn't know a lot about him until I read up about him.
Julian, again, this is a guy. Had he gotten confirmed, first of all, let's just be clear. First of all, the vote is still scheduled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next
Flake
week.
says no. Scott says no. That can change. So let's just be clear. Let's be real clear. The vote hasn't taken place yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Right now, they are no's. But this is a guy, anybody who looked at his history, I mean, this guy wants to deny black folks opportunities to vote. He was very much involved in the writing of the law that was struck down by the federal courts, that voter suppression ID bill. I mean, and so anybody, and then defending that, I mean, I'm sorry, that's not the kind of person you want making decisions in a place where black people make up a third of the area.
Well, you know, two things. First of all, Vanita, congratulations. Okay. Great work. I think that the entire civil rights community, but certainly your organization, the NAACP, did great work in keeping the pressure on. Secondly, I disagree with you. They do trot, and I'm going to use my words, they trot him out whenever they want to have a non-all-white picture. Here come Tim Scott. He's not on the committee, but he's sitting over there. Because we don't, because y'all know what your problem is. But number three, and most importantly, Roland, most importantly, as Reverend Barber has said, you've been with him in Mississippi. We've all been with him. This is a man in North Carolina who the racist court said had attempted to exclude black voters with surgical precision.
A laser-like precision. Yep, yeah, surgical.
Surgical precision. So this is a man who should not have even been nominated, if the truth is to be told. So, you know, but this is the agenda of the Republican Party, unfortunately. There was a time when it wouldn't be Tim Scott as the only one standing up. There was a time when decent Republicans would have said this was just unacceptable.
Right.
But now, because the orangutan is there, and forgive me, orangutans, you know, the orange orangutans, the orangutan lobby, I apologize to y'all.
I don't even know how to, what does that mean? Orangutan lobby. I mean, we're not animals, so.
Well, the president,
and neither is the president.
The president behaves like one.
Well, he's not an animal.
He behaves like one. But, you know, the fact is that he has nominated people who are not only racist, sexist, etc. So what do we expect? I'm just happy.
And some grossly unqualified people.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
when you nominate somebody who literally got out of law school just 11 years ago, and no disrespect to anybody who finished law school more than a decade ago, and also other people who literally had never filed a brief in their career, who had never walked into a courtroom, that is not who you want sitting on a federal bench. But
let me just, I mean, while I'm sitting here kind of, revelatory about Thomas Farr, the reality is that the Trump administration has filled 89 vacancies in the short 2 years that it's been in office. And he has swiftly remade the courts, and he has another 2 years to do that with a majority of Republicans in the Senate. And so while
and these are people who are like 32, I mean, they're very young.
They are
by
mostly
design.
pale, white, and male, and they are young. And there are others who've gotten through who have a deeply anti-civil rights agenda. And so we have a lot of work to do to cut out, but this builds power, this builds momentum. It's important for us, but we also recognize the long fight here to save the independence of the courts. The courts have been one of the most important institutions as a bulwark against some of the most egregious excesses of the other two branches of government.
Which is why they want these judges on the court.
They understand the power.
Just for everybody understands, I think you understand why this is the case. Again, since Brown v. Board of Education in 54, since Brown 2 in 55, folks have said, wait a minute, that's where the activist court came from. The gains of the civil rights movement, but because of the courts. That's what led many conservatives to launch these institutions, these foundations, to specifically target the courts. The Federalist Society is all about creating next generation right-wing federal judges. They literally are focused on breeding them, creating them, molding them from the time they're 18 years old. That's who Brett Kavanaugh was. And there are other people who are like that. So understand why this is a major deal. Now, we talked about, of course, pressure, the importance of pressure. Well, Facebook is feeling some of that pressure as well. You might recall the blockbuster New York Times story saying how they hired a right-wing PR group to attack Color of Change by tagging George Soros to them. Others call that anti-Semitic as well. Well, Leadership Conference of Civil Rights of Vanita's organization, they have joined forces with them, calling for immediate steps from Facebook to rebuild faith among its black employees as well as their users. They wrote a scathing letter to Facebook's CEO and founder Mark Zuckerberg and the COO Sheryl Sandberg. Here's an excerpt. You have put your enormous corporate thumb on the scale in attempting to make civil rights a partisan issue, when in fact civil rights is and should be nonpartisan. Supporting civil rights means respecting the fundamental dignity and equality of everyone. Instead of articulating that view as a core value of your company when you announce the civil rights audit, Facebook has instead positioned itself as equally friendly to those who advocate for civil rights and to those whose political agenda is to undermine those very same rights. Facebook appointed former Senator John Kyle to lead the anti-conservative bias review and ignored the fact that he has made incendiary and discriminatory remarks about Muslims, voted for a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage, and has had a deplorable record on civil rights and liberties. While the strategy of announcing the audit at the same time may have been the politically expedient thing to do, it is also morally bankrupt. Our worst fears about this false dichotomy that you have implemented were realized when, after finally acknowledging massive voter suppression efforts on Facebook, you paired voter suppression trainings for employees with the training on so-called voter fraud, a false conspiracy theory that has been used to justify barriers to voters of color. Now, Vanita, first of all, Color of Change, of course, they are having a meeting with Facebook, with Sheryl Sandberg on this issue in terms of what happened with them. Also, we saw Mark Lucky, one of their employees, write a long piece before he resigned, sent to all employees in the company, talking about how they failed their black employees as well as their black users. When you look at again, I've talked about on the news front, all these news shows they've launched, not a single one is African American, not a single one black owned. And so that also goes to who's controlling these issues. What response do you expect to get from Facebook?
Look, I think it was really important that the leadership conference stand with Color of Change, because when one of us is attacked, we need to stand together. And the response is, we wanted to put this letter before Facebook because a few months ago, several of our groups had urged Facebook to do the civil rights audit. It was going to be a top-to-bottom review of a whole host of issues, from targeted ads to predatory lending on their site to the propagation of online hate and the like. And we had faith and we were pleased when Facebook actually announced the audit, but it turns out that they haven't made a commitment to publishing the findings of the report, that we don't have any commitment yet from the highest level of the company about how they're actually going to implement the recommendations that are going to come out of it. We need to have the highest level of commitment, even from, we mentioned in the letter that we should have a task force or some part of the board that is actually engaged in implementing the changes that need to be made. For too long, these problems have been known at Facebook, and they're not just about how the platforms use. As you said, it's also about the culture internal to the company, about how do they support diversity, how do they support recruitment and retention of black employees and employees of color. This is a really important moment for Facebook, and it was important in light of the New York Times article that came out a couple weeks ago that we leverage this moment to make sure that this audit actually has teeth and is going to serve the broad community that is saying Facebook has to be able to have equitable practices and policies. I just was frankly sick and tired of having Facebook, every time they made an announcement that was kind of a pro-civil rights announcement, they would couple it with something about conservative views. There is civil rights, as I said, is nonpartisan, and they need to stop doing that. And so the hope is that Rashad Robinson is meeting with Facebook today, that there will be continued engagement, and that we'll get our demands met, and we'll have a really rigorous and meaningful civil rights audit that will produce change.
And for folks to understand, I mean, again, we then heard about how Russian bots, how they were using the issue of voter suppression, how they were even had this fake Black Lives Matter account that had 100,000 plus folks on it. Black people were directly being targeted during this campaign. Now, of course, we're hearing as a result of emails seized in the UK that Facebook knew as early as 2014 about Russians trying to use Facebook for the purpose of impacting our election.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of what the deep frustration has been for advocates that have been trying to ensure that there's accountability by Facebook for these actions. I mean, in a lot of ways, look, I think Facebook, there are folks in Facebook that are eager and recognize finally the problems that exist on the platform. The question is, what are they actually going to do about it? Given what happened in 2016, we had real concerns about why they had to wait until 2 or 3 weeks before the election to set up a war room that was going to deal with voter suppression. And then when we found out that they were kind of coupling this with this voter fraud issue, which is the very basis by which voter suppression policies are justified, you know, they can't kind of go, they can take one step forward and then 2 steps back. We've got to now, we have to continue with the pressure. Too many people are engaging with Facebook. They have an enormous influence. And so while civil rights advocates are used to kind of dealing with government entities and the role of government, Facebook and a lot of other tech companies, it's not just Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Google, it's other companies, There's a real need now to figure out what is the governance. They're not regulated. What is the social governance? What's the
They are
legal
massive.
framework?
I mean,
and they're massive.
Facebook and YouTube, to understand how massive they are, when it comes to all digital ad dollars spent in this country, they get 70%. That means everybody else.
That's right.
Every other company, large and small, is sharing the 30. They get 70%. Yeah. Wow. That's massive.
I mean, they have a huge footprint in people's lives, and so that's why this stuff really matters.
Julian?
You know, the thing, I think the key point is whether or not this audit, the civil rights audit, will be made public.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just that they're doing an audit, but that it's made public, because I don't know anybody who isn't on Facebook, to be honest with you. Right. And, you know.
Well, no, remember, we got to go beyond. It's not just Facebook. Yeah. They bought Instagram. They bought WhatsApp. So it's not just Facebook. So it's all, you got to look at what they also own. So you can say, oh, hell, Facebook on Instagram. No.
Same thing.
You're on Facebook because they own Facebook.
So the first thing is that the audit must be made public. The second thing is that they have attracted federal attention through these congressional hearings that they've had, and they have woefully failed to answer the questions that have been raised from a bipartisan basis. I mean, everyone is asking questions about how they're regulated. So, I think partnering with the Color of Change is absolutely the right thing to do. But the second important thing is that we all, as activists, follow this.
I mean, Malik, you know it's something when you piss off the left and the right. I mean, you're doing a major damn job when you pissing off everybody.
Tell me about it. You know, this is one of those.
He's gonna agree with me again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on a lot of things.
Next thing you know, y'all gonna be going after some innocent.
Nah, we got to draw the line somewhere.
If he buying, you gonna take a drink. Go ahead. Go ahead, Malik. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I thought so. Go ahead, Malik.
But no, I think this is one of those opportunities, you know, in a perfect world where conservatives can actually work with, you know, Republicans work with Democrats. Forget conservative and anything. Where Republicans can work with Democrats to address issues like this. Because we are, you know, there are issues about voter suppression and a lot of things that we talk about, but we can come together on issues like this. The problem is that we're in such tribes that we don't want to work together. We don't want to work across the aisle because we view the person on the other side as an enemy.
Final comment on this, Michael.
Well, clearly Facebook, like any other company, and I don't think they're immune, as they began to grow and explode, they're thinking, besides the advertising dollars and the user fees, they're thinking as long as one side gets to say something and the other side gets to say something, we're okay, we're doing the right thing. But clearly that's not the case because the balance is not quite equal.
Voter fraud and voter suppression are not the same thing.
Absolutely.
Well, but I think your point is a really good one, which is Facebook needs to decide what kind of company it wants to be and whether it has a value statement. You know, a lot of these companies, like, you know, there are tech companies that have community standards and they choose to use it. It's not, they don't consider themselves this neutral platform. They have chosen to stand for something. And I think Facebook puts itself out as a neutral platform. But the problem is other folks are exploiting it, and they do have a responsibility. They are private actors. They are not government actors. And the need to actually figure out what is happening on their space, and the need really for a more rigorous legal framework, because a lot of our landmark civil rights laws the courts haven't decided that they apply to these digital platforms. So we're in a little bit of this limbo land, and that's why I think there's kind of a lot of attention on these companies right now.
All right, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, going to a break right now, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk about gerrymandering and what folks in Virginia are trying to do after we saw when Michigan passed a ballot initiative. Virginia says, you know what, time for us to do the exact same thing. We'll be back in a moment on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I always had something to shoot for each year, to jump 1 inch further. Olympic champion, Jackie Joyner-Kersee.
Back out, I got it, get out. All right, y'all. HBCU Giving Day, hashtag HBCU Giving Day. The university today, I don't know how in the hell they got picked. But Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina, founded in 1873, later reorganized in 1926 as an all-female institution. Who used to be the president there? Yeah.
Well, hey.
Queen Hennessy, Dr. Julianne Malvo. Yeah, trust me, if Malik buying, you're going to go take that drink. Don't worry about it. And of course, again, also first African-American district attorney in the state of North Carolina, Belinda J. Foster, and the first African-American mayor of Greensboro, North Carolina, Yvonne Johnson. Folks, if you want to donate to Bennett, go to bennett.edu. Bennett.edu. And also, if you are a graduate of Bennett, look, send your check. I'm telling you, I keep telling y'all, all these people keep talking about HBCU, but when you ask them if you send a check, then they get all quiet. Oh, you running your mouth before. So if you walk around with a Bennett sweatshirt or a hat or a license plate, and you got your little Bennett pom-poms, guess what? Send your coins.
You know what, Roland? Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, 90% giving rates. Under Dr. Cole's leadership, she got it up to 30. I got it up to 35 at bed, but 35.
Claflin is #1 in the country. #1 HBCU. More than 50% of Claflin graduates get back to their school. Wow. But the average HBCU, average, 5%.
Howard, our mother.
It's only at 10.3.
Yes, which is and it's up.
Undergrad, right?
And it's up.
Because when he got there, it was 3.7.
And part of the challenge, of course, is that so many of our HBCUs have such limited resources that we're not, I mean, our development departments are tiny. But we shouldn't have to beg you. We don't beg you to come to homecoming. So we should have to beg you to give money.
That's all I'm saying. I'm saying. You send a check. Send a check. $5? At least send that. Well, but don't sit here and say you can't send nothing.
Because when we go to foundations and corporations,
the first thing they say is,
what's your alumni giving rate?
There you go.
And so for the bells out there, it takes a bell to do it well, but you got to write it.
All right, then. So, again, Bennett.edu. All right, folks, gerrymandering is a huge issue. The Supreme Court punted on this decision when they kicked a case back to the lower courts. We saw, of course, in Michigan, where there's a ballot initiative where they created an independent commission. It's no longer in the hands of the legislature or the governor. In North Carolina, guess what they're trying to do? Well, they got gerrymandering there. And you want to understand the impact of gerrymandering? Here's the piece. Republicans received about 50% of the votes cast in the midterms, but they won 10 out of 13 seats. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Also, in Virginia, you have an effort there when it comes to deal with the issue of gerrymandering. And they made an announcement of that today. Joining us right now is Brian Cannon, Executive Director of One Virginia 2021. One Virginia 2021. And so, Brian, let's talk about that. What is the plan that you have for Virginia? We saw what just happened in Michigan. Is this going to become the trend? Is this a ballot initiative, or are you trying to get the legislature to pass this?
A little bit of both. In Virginia, we have to pass it through our legislature twice, and then it gets on the ballot for people to vote. It would be in Virginia in November of 2020. I have no doubt Virginians would approve it. We've got to get it through our legislators and tell them that we want to let the people vote.
And again, we're seeing, people realize why the ballot initiatives are most important because, frankly, when you have parties controlling this, they want to structure these seats to benefit them. And one of the reasons why we have such extreme partisanship is because you have gerrymandered seats where if you're guaranteed to win, there's no need for me to talk to somebody on the other side.
So true. It pushes everybody to the polls. Makes it hard to come to the middle. It makes it hard for our politics to actually address the issues we want them to, right? When you see, support on key issues, over 70% of Americans or Virginians want X, and our Congress or our state legislature refuses to even hear bills on X. That lets you know something's wrong and the people aren't being heard.
So what is so you say you must get it passed twice, like by both chambers?
By both chambers. We're not like California. I think you and I and a couple other people could write on the back of a napkin and amend California's constitution. Virginia, we take our time in doing this. But the political dynamics are interesting because right now the Republicans control our legislature. We have a Democratic governor. But the blue wave has been pretty big in Virginia for the last 2 Novembers, and I don't think Trump's going to lose his Twitter handle anytime soon. So I guess that the blue wave will continue, and that makes it actually advantageous for perhaps some of those Republicans in the House of Delegates. The Senate Republicans have been good, but in the House of Delegates, to stop dragging their feet. You can look at Governor Larry Hogan, who's been a champion of redistricting reform, or John Kasich, or Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, these are Republican governors who have made it happen in their states. There's no party affiliation, or nobody's got a halo perfect in this for any party. It's about really giving the people the opportunity to choose their representatives.
All right, then. Well, Brian, we certainly appreciate it. Good luck with that, and we certainly hope it takes hold.
Thank you, Roland. Appreciate it.
All right, then. Folks, going to go to a break right now. We come back. A major verdict for a family in California. A mentally man shot and killed by cops. They lied about it. Now they got a big payday, but unfortunately their son is still not with us. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered in just a moment. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, we've heard this story before. A black man with mental health issues shot and killed by police. A video then surfaces that contradicts the officer's reports. Then the family sues. What's a bit unusual about this case is that the officer who killed 25-year-old Anthony Smith was also African-American. What's not unusual is that the cops lied. Well, yesterday, a jury in California awarded the family $2.5 million. Joining us now from Riverside, California, is Anthony's mom, Sybil Davis, and her attorney, John Harris. Sybil, first and foremost, we're so sorry for the loss of your son, but surely it has to just drive you crazy. And not just because the cop is black, but the fact that you have cops who committed this act and then lied about it and somehow believe they would just get away with it.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Looks like we got some feedback issues right there. So guys, let me know if we can get that sorted out with Sybil's microphone. Is it John Harris there?
How are you, Roland?
John. So same thing. So John, do me a favor. It looks like we're getting feedback. If you could, so I'm not quite sure why. Okay, so you need him to mute his phone, folks? Okay, so Mike, do this favor. John, if you could actually mute the microphone on your phone, then that way when we get in the feedback.
We'll get that.
All right, John, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that's much better there. And folks, folks in control room, let me know when Sybil, when her connection is also straight. So John, again, you have these cops who commit these acts, lie about it, and then for many of them, they keep going on as if and no one holds them accountable.
Well, what happened in this case was remarkable. The deputies involved in the shooting were interviewed by the homicide detectives within hours of the shooting. They didn't realize there was a video of the shooting. So they had put together their story to make it look like the force they used was reasonable by lying about what Anthony was doing right before he was shot, which turned out to be not the case. For one, they said that Anthony had lunged at him. He had not. He was just standing there. Okay. They secondly said he never went down. He was just approaching him, which was not the case. So, and then they said that they had to do it in fear of their lives, which was absolutely untrue. So we uncovered during discovery a video of the shooting that was taken by a lady that happened to be sitting at the intersection. Thank God for her. Had she not done that, we wouldn't be sitting here today. This case would have never gone to trial because their lies would have prevailed.
And Sybil, that's really, I think, what is most unfortunate, that if it wasn't for the video of bystanders, we wouldn't be knowing the truth in so many of these cases.
Right. It's very unfortunate.
Same thing. Just hold on 1 second. I think they're going to mute your phone as well, so we're not getting the feedback. We're done. Okay. Let me know when we're straight. We're almost there.
Okay, is that better?
There we go. Go ahead. Actually, I think I'm still having some problems. But Sybil, go ahead.
I'm just very pleased that the jury was able to see Can they hear me?
Yeah, so if y'all could mute the microphone, because that's sort of the problem there. So guys, let me help them out with that, and we'll come right back to Sybil. So guys, just let me know. Let me read this story here, folks. Remember these kids from a school in Wisconsin with their Heil Hitler signs? Well, the Baraboo, Wisconsin School District said they can't punish the students because that would violate the First Amendment rights of the students. That's kind of weird, especially considering they punish kids all the time for doing things in pictures. For anything, but all of a sudden they can't somehow do that to them. Okay, that's kind of interesting there. And also, so I think we got Sybil back. I think it might be fixed now. Sybil, can you now hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
There we go. Okay. Again, were it not for the bystanders video, we would not even know what took place, and the cops' lies would have stood.
Yeah, if we didn't discover that there was a video, we probably would have never had a case. I'm very grateful that the video surfaced and the truth was able to come out.
Did the police, they ever apologize?
That was a very graphic video, I might say. We actually saw them take that last shot at Anthony, and he went down for good after that shot was taken. And frankly, that was the issue that the jury looked at. We said, look at that video and see with your own eyes what occurred on that morning of July 16, 2015.
What happened to the police officer? What happened to the police officer? Is he still on the force?
It's a she, actually.
Okay, we're back.
I said, I said, what happened to the police officer?
Well, nothing happened criminally. They did an investigation. They exonerated her, surprisingly. So we sued civilly because that was the only remedy we had left. But nothing, actually, she got promoted after the shooting.
She got promoted?
Yes, she went from corporal to sergeant.
Wow.
So she lied and gets a promotion.
She lied and got a promotion.
Wow.
Yes.
And now taxpayers have to pay $2.5 million because she lied, and they must pay for her salary increase.
Well, I don't know if it went to her salary, but she certainly got a promotion. Absolutely.
Well, it is certainly, well, we certainly appreciate that the jury saw fit to award Sybil, you and the family this award. Does not bring back your son at all, and hopefully this will lead to changes in that police department and others as well.
Well, we certainly hope so, and that was one of the messages we gave to the jury. And by the way, we had a great, diverse jury. They deliberated for 3 days, so they took this matter very seriously and came back with an appropriate and just award.
All right, then. Thanks a lot. I appreciate both of you for joining us.
Thank you, Roland, for having us on your show.
All right, thanks a lot. I want to go to my panel here. I still contend, and that will not change, that if a police officer is caught for lying, they should automatically be fired. Period.
I agree.
I mean, I agree with you. But even more than that, I think what's really important here, the officer in question, there were 2 shots. One was, the last shot was by a black woman officer. That's the one who got promoted. The thin blue line transcends race. It's not about, you know, we talk about all the black people who get shot, but some of them are being shot by black people because the thin blue line is such that they cover up for each other. And so, you know, I agree with you, Roland, completely. If you get caught lying, you should be fired. Furthermore, if you don't have your camera on, why are we relying on bystanders with their phones when it ought to be the body cam that you're supposed to have on your body? That's why it's called a body cam. You know, so,
again, because they want to turn the audio off or turn the video off. And same thing, I believe if you turn that camera off,
bye,
gone. Michael,
I just don't. I'm putting my law school hat on. I don't understand the arrogance of the Riverside DA's office. Once the video surfaced, why was there a trial in the first place? They should have been writing settlement negotiations as soon as the video came out. I don't understand what, but they were thinking it's okay.
Because the police
we'll be able to get through
the benefit of the doubt.
Of course, absolutely.
Give them that.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know, this is another one of those cases where, you know, of course there are levels to things, and in this particular case, when we're talking about life or death, And, you know, if a police officer lies about something, and especially in commission of that type of injury, I think they should just go ahead.
The other piece of it is this. What's the correlation between these shootings and mental illness? I mean, many of the police officers have not been trained to deal with the mentally ill.
Right.
So this guy was, by description, I mean, he had got into it with some people at his house at 3 a.m. Someone called the police, and then at 6 a.m. they found him. They said that he was bipolar, whatever he was. Right. And so we see a lot of these cases where, you know, somebody, he had his pants down. He was no threat. He was no threat to anybody. I mean, he was mentally ill, but he was no threat. But
why is the first thought to pull a gun? Why isn't there also a taser on their hip?
Or something.
Why can't they tase, and then you can live to fight another day and talk about what happened?
Well,
why do you have to use a bullet?
Some people have died from the taser, but in more cases, you're likely to live with the taser. No, because here's why. The reality is the Supreme Court has allowed the standard to be that a police officer can use deadly force to protect them. And the problem is what these cops have done. I go back to the case, Kajima Powell in St. Louis, when a mentally disturbed man, they call the cops, they tell the 911 dispatcher, this is a mentally disturbed man. He is ranting and raving on a corner after he grabbed 2 energy drinks out of a store. This happened shortly after Mike Brown was killed. She's on the street corner. He's yelling and screaming. And there's a video that was shot of him yelling and screaming. And this was actually, and so it wasn't like it was instant. And so he's yelling and screaming. Cops roll up. And from the moment the door opened to the first shot, it was 16 seconds.
Yeah,
it was 16
so they can't load it for bear.
seconds. Yeah. It was like, well, no, they get out of the car, and their whole deal was, and so he had to get like a butter knife in his hand.
Yeah.
And he literally, he was yelling, MFs kill me. That's what he's yelling.
Yeah.
Okay, now
so
I'm sorry, if you're a cop,
yeah, you know something.
If 2 cops roll up,
yeah,
and the dude is yelling, kill me, your first response would be, this SOB crazy.
Right.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
He makes a step. He is, I'm talking the distance, it wasn't like we were this close. Boom, they unload.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm honest about...
Killed him immediately.
Yeah, I'm honest about stuff like this. You know, even being a Republican, you know, I remember that what was Tamir Rice, 12? And I remember how I felt.
That was less than a minute.
Yeah, we're talking about seconds. Within the time it takes me to say this right here, he was dead. They arrived on the scene and he was dead. We can ascribe it to say, well, you know, and I don't even think those officers were...
and that officer, remember, this was a reject from another police department. They had fired him in another department, then he came and shot this child within minutes. But the fact is that we have been accustomed to giving...
I'm just trying to figure out how the hell you get promoted.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure that one out.
After you cost the county $2.5 million.
Right. So I just want to show this here. Go to my iPad, please. And so this was the Kajima Powell shooting. Cops show up. You see he's yelling. You got to pull the audio up. He's yelling. He approaches them. Look again. I just want you to just. And they were shooting it.
I remember that.
He steps on the embankment.
Yep.
Watch this. He literally. Okay, for the BBC. Okay, I don't know why. So
they're not going to show you the whole video.
Okay, right. So first of all, I would have pulled. I remember I was trying to find the actual video the brother posted, but it's sort of the same thing. I think part of the other issue here, which we have to deal with, is which is the problem in this country. We keep seeing people who are mentally ill who are shot and killed, and police officers. And folks may say things happen real fast. There's lots of action. No. If a call is made, in his case, they said, oh, it wasn't relayed from 911 to the officers that he was mentally ill. And this is what happened. Same thing happened in Dallas. Black woman calls the cops. She says, my son is out of control. Cops show up, and she says, I'm so glad y'all here to deal with him. So she walks out of view of the body camera. The son has a screwdriver. The son is playing with the screwdriver. He is fascinated with the screwdriver. Cops, put the screwdriver down, put the screwdriver down. At no point does he grab a screwdriver and come charging at him. At no point. They unload, kill him. The mom is standing right there. She's screaming, going, I called you to save my son. Her call ends up getting her son killed.
And
final comments.
We have to be careful in our community about when we call the police. I mean, what we know is that we can't depend on them. They're not our friends all the time. Sometimes they're not. So we have to be careful.
This is also, we know to that point, that's also one of the storylines on Empire. That's a storyline where Vivica Fox is Taraji Henson's sister. Her son is mentally ill. He is beating the hell out of her, about to kill her. Taraji Henson Cookie calls the cops. Sister goes crazy. What's wrong with you? You could have got my son killed.
Right.
Well, because you know that,
Yep.
and because so many, I mean, the pieces of this for African American women often are that when women are victims, there's a you know, a dichotomy. Do you call the police and, you know, protect yourself and also put a black man at risk?
There you go. Absolutely. All right, folks, real quick. Vandals have defaced a Black Panther mural on Crenshaw Boulevard in South L.A. with swastikas. Of course, here's the mural right here. And trust me, they catch them fools. You know what's going to end up happening to them. But hopefully that happens as well. All right, folks, we are done for today. Several things. Tomorrow, Rashad Robinson, Color of Change, he is going to be joining us on the show to talk about their meeting with Facebook. Also, Bowie State, I'll be talking with their president on the show tomorrow as well. Plus, an expert, HIV and AIDS with women from Morgan State is going to be on the show. And she's talking about the reason why a lot of young folks don't want to get tested, because what her research has shown is they're saying, I got more things that I'm concerned about than that. And it really deals with, again, the thought process of so many folks. And also, Constance White, of course, the former editor of Essence Magazines, has this amazing book on black folks in style. We're going to have that on the show tomorrow as well. So we're going to have a fantastic show for all of you tomorrow. Want you guys to check it out. Want to thank Michael. Want to thank Julian. Want to thank Malik. Malik, trust me, go on by the Hennessy. Julian be right there. It's all good. And then y'all can, the left and the right.
You know that's our drink.
The left and the right can come together over Hennessy. You know that's something when Hennessy can bring together a black Republican and a black liberal. And so Hennessy, if y'all ever do that commercial, y'all better cut me a check. Trust me, that's right.
Yeah, right. The bumbo sauce on the side.
Can y'all imagine that commercial? How to end the political divide? Hennessy. Black left and black right get together over Hennessy. Yeah, I see that commercial right there. All right, y'all. Don't forget to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Join our fan club. We certainly want you to support this show. He being real black, taking selfies while the show's still going on. I mean, that's really black happening right here. Get a shot. Thank you. Damn, Henry, you're too slow, dog. You're too slow. All right, y'all. Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to support the show. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Holla!